I thought I knew my husband until the night he looked me in the eyes and called me a monkey. 3 years of marriage, 3 years of making myself smaller to fit into his perfect world, and in one moment of rage, he showed me exactly what he really thought of his black wife. What he didn't expect was for me to actually disappear. No screaming, no begging, just gone. 5 years later, I'm standing in the mansion he tried to buy but couldn't afford, holding the keys to a life he said I could never build on my own. The man who told me I was lucky to have the scraps of his love is about to learn what happens when the woman you underestimate decides to buy your dreams right out from under you. Some revenge is served cold, but the sweetest kind is served with compound interest and a mortgage you'll never qualify for. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're from, because this story about quiet power and patient justice is just getting started. The kitchen was spotless. Every dish washed. Every counter wiped clean. I stood at the marble island in our pristine home, folding the last dish towel with careful precision. The silence felt heavy tonight, like it was waiting for something to break. Our house was beautiful. Everyone said so. Floor-to-ceiling windows, designer furniture, a kitchen that belonged in magazines. Ethan had worked hard for all of this. I knew that. I appreciated it. But sometimes, standing in all this perfection, I felt like a ghost. I heard his car in the driveway. The engine cut off with a sharp click. Car door slammed harder than usual. My stomach tightened. I recognized the signs. Bad day at the office. The front door opened and closed. His footsteps echoed across the hardwood floors. Heavy, tired, angry. Naomi? His voice carried that edge I'd learned to read like weather patterns. In the kitchen, I called back, keeping my voice light, neutral. Ethan appeared in the doorway. 32 years old and still handsome in that clean-cut way that made mothers trust him instantly. Blonde hair perfectly styled despite the long day. Blue eyes that could charm anyone. Tonight, those eyes looked cold. He loosened his tie without looking at me. Long day. I saved you a plate, I said, moving toward the refrigerator. Salmon and vegetables, your favorite. He dropped his briefcase on the counter with a thud. Not hungry. I stopped, turned back to face him. His jaw was tight, shoulders tense. Whatever happened at work had really gotten to him. Want to talk about it? I asked gently. Nothing to talk about. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through emails with sharp, angry swipes. This was how it always went. Bad day at work meant silence at home, meant walking on eggshells until his mood improved. I'd learned not to push, learned to give him space, but tonight felt different. The air between us crackled with something I couldn't name. I went back to cleaning counters that were already clean. Anything to keep my hands busy. To fill the silence that pressed against my chest. The Peterson deal fell through, he said suddenly. I looked up. I'm sorry. I know how important that was to you. 6 months of work, gone. He slammed his phone down. Because some small-minded idiots can't see past their own prejudices. My hands stilled on the dishcloth. What do you mean? They didn't like the diversity angle we pitched. Said it felt forced, unnatural. His voice dripped with disgust. Like having different kinds of people work together is some radical concept. I felt a familiar knot form in my stomach. These conversations always made me uncomfortable. Not because Ethan was wrong to be upset about prejudice, but because of how he talked about it, like he was fighting someone else's battle. Like it had nothing to do with him personally. That's awful, I said carefully. It is awful. I work with some of the smartest people in the industry. People who can see past skin color and focus on talent. But these old money clients... He shook his head. They're stuck in the past. The way he said it made me feel strange. Like he was patting himself on the back for being so enlightened. So different from those other white people. Well, their loss, I said, trying to keep things light. You'll find better clients. Maybe. He grabbed a beer from the fridge, popping it open with more force than necessary. Maybe I'm tired of fighting other people's fights. The words hit me wrong. Other people's fights. Like racism was something that happened to people he didn't know. People he didn't live with. I kept my voice steady. Sometimes the right thing is worth fighting for. He looked at me then. Really looked at me for the first time since he'd walked in. His eyes moved over my face like he was seeing something that annoyed him. Easy for you to say. You don't have to deal with the politics at my level. The dismissal in his voice made my cheeks warm. I deal with politics at work too. At a hospital administration job? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's not the same thing, Naomi. I'm trying to run a company. The way he said my name, like it tasted sour in his mouth. I set down the dishcloth. I wasn't trying to compare. Look, I don't want to argue about this. I'm stressed enough. But something in me pushed forward. Maybe it was the way he'd dismissed my work, my experience, like being a black woman in any workplace was somehow easier than being a white man in charge. I'm just saying, I understand what it's like to face prejudice. Do you? The question cut through the air like a blade. Do you really? I stared at him. What? I'm the one losing deals because I try to do the right thing. I'm the one who gets called a bleeding heart for hiring diverse staff. I'm the one paying the price for being progressive. My mouth fell open. He was making himself the victim of racism. Actually making himself the victim. Ethan, that's not... What? What isn't it? His voice rose. I'm out there fighting for people like you every single day. And what do I get? Lectures about how I don't understand. People like you. The words hung between us like poison gas. People like you. Not for us. Not for my wife. For people like me. I wasn't lecturing you, I said quietly. Weren't you? He took a long drink of beer, watching me over the bottle. Always ready to remind me about how hard your life is. How much you struggle. I never said, you don't have to say it. It's in everything you do. The way you look at me sometimes. Like I couldn't possibly understand your pain. My heart started beating faster. This wasn't the conversation I thought we were having. This was something else. Something uglier. Ethan, I think you're upset about work. I'm upset about a lot of things. He set the beer down hard. I'm upset about losing a deal because I believed in equality. I'm upset about being made to feel guilty for being successful. And I'm really upset about being married to someone who acts like I'm the enemy. The words hit me like a slap. I don't act like you're the enemy. Don't you? He stepped closer. Too close. Every time something goes wrong in your life, it's because of racism. Every time I disagree with you, it's because I don't get it. Every time you don't get what you want, it's because the world is against you. That's not true, isn't it? Name one time. One time you took responsibility instead of blaming discrimination. I felt tears building behind my eyes. This was so far from anything we'd ever fought about before. So cruel and personal. I don't know why you're saying these things. Because I'm tired, Naomi. Tired of walking on eggshells. Tired of being the villain in your story. You're not the villain in my story. Then why do I feel like everything I do is wrong? Why do I feel like I'm constantly being judged for things I can't control? What things you can't control? The question came out sharper than I intended. Because what couldn't he control? His success? His opportunity? His ability to walk through the world without question? His face changed. Something dark flickered across his features. You know what? Forget it. He turned away. I don't want to do this tonight. But I couldn't let it go. Not when he'd made it sound like being married to me was some kind of burden. No, let's talk about this. What exactly are you tired of? I said, forget it. You said you were tired of being married to someone who acts like you're the enemy. I want to know what you meant. He spun back around. You really want to know? Yes. Fine. His voice got very quiet, very controlled. I'm tired of having my success treated like it's stolen. I'm tired of having my opinions dismissed because I'm white. I'm tired of being made to feel guilty for working hard and achieving things. I never made you feel guilty, didn't you? Every time you make comments about privilege, every time you act like my accomplishments don't count because I had advantages. I never said your accomplishments don't count. You don't have to say it. It's in the way you look at me, like I cheated somehow. I felt like I was falling down a hole. This wasn't my husband talking. This was someone else, someone angry and resentful and... Ethan, where is this coming from? It's coming from 3 years of marriage to someone who sees me as a symbol instead of a person. A symbol of what? You tell me. White privilege, systemic advantage, everything wrong with the world. The accusation hung between us. I could barely breathe. I don't see you as a symbol. I see you as my husband. Do you? Because it doesn't feel that way. How does it feel? He stared at me for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. It feels like you think you deserve better than me, like you're doing me some kind of favor by being here. That's insane. Is it? You act like you're slumming it, like being married to a successful white guy is beneath you somehow. I act like what? Like you're too good for this life, too good for me. I couldn't speak, couldn't process what I was hearing. 3 years of marriage and he thought I felt superior to him? You have it backwards, I whispered. Do I? Yes, you do. Something in my tone must have gotten through to him because he paused, looked at me more carefully. What do you mean? I took a shaky breath. I mean I spend most of my time trying not to embarrass you. The words came out before I could stop them, before I could think about whether I should say them. Embarrass me how? By saying the wrong thing at your company parties, by not knowing the right wine to order, by not fitting in with your friends' wives. That's ridiculous. Is it? When was the last time you introduced me to a new client? When was the last time I came to an important company event? He was quiet. You keep me separate, I continued. Away from the parts of your life that matter. And I told myself it was because you were protecting me from their judgment. But maybe what? Maybe you were protecting yourself from mine. The silence stretched between us like a bridge about to collapse. I think, he said very carefully, that you're overthinking this. But I wasn't overthinking. For the first time in our marriage, I was thinking clearly. Am I? Or am I finally seeing what's been obvious all along? Which is? That you're embarrassed by me too. He shook his head. Naomi, you're being dramatic. Am I? Tell me the last time you posted a photo of us together on social media. I don't post personal stuff. You post photos from company events. You post photos with your friends. You just don't post photos with your black wife. The words hit the air like gunshots. Black wife. I'd said it. The thing we both pretended not to notice. That's not fair. Isn't it? You're twisting everything, making it about race when it's not. Then what's it about? It's about... he stopped, struggled for words. It's about compatibility. What does that mean? It means we're different people. From different backgrounds, with different perspectives. Different how? You know how. No, I don't. Tell me. Jesus, Naomi, do I have to spell it out? Yes, you do. He ran his hands through his perfect hair, paced to the window and back. Fine. We see the world differently. We have different values, different priorities. Like what? like everything: work, success, responsibility. What about those things? You think the world owes you something. I believe in earning what you get. The accusation landed like a physical blow. I think the world owes me something? Don't you? Every setback is someone else's fault. Every disappointment is because of discrimination. That's not true, isn't it? When you didn't get the promotion last year, I was more qualified than the person they hired. According to you. According to my performance reviews. According to my education. According to my experience. But instead of looking at what you could do better, you blamed racism. I stared at him. The person they hired was a white man with half my qualifications. Maybe he interviewed better. Maybe he was a better fit for the team. A better fit how? I don't know. But I know that assuming racism is the easy answer. It means you never have to look at yourself. My hand started shaking. Look at myself for what? For ways you might improve, ways you might be holding yourself back. You think I'm holding myself back? I think you use discrimination as an excuse not to push harder. The room started spinning. An excuse? A safety net. If you don't get something you want, you can blame prejudice instead of performance. You think I make up racism? I think you see it everywhere because it's easier than seeing your own limitations. The words hit me like ice water. My own husband. The man who was supposed to love and protect me. Telling me that racism was in my head. Wow, I whispered. Look, I'm not saying, no, I heard you, loud and clear. I'm just saying that maybe if you focused more on excellence and less on victimhood. Victimhood? Poor choice of words. No, perfect choice of words. That's exactly what you think of me. I turned away from him. Walked to the window. Outside, our neighborhood sparkled with expensive cars and manicured lawns. Beautiful homes filled with beautiful people living beautiful lives. I didn't mean it like that, he said behind me. How did you mean it? I meant that you're stronger than you think, capable of more than you realize. But you let other people's prejudices define what you can achieve. I turned back to face him. Other people's prejudices? Yes. What about your prejudices? His face went very still. I don't have prejudices. Don't you? Against who? Against what? Against me. That's insane. I married you. Yes, you did. And then you spent 3 years making me feel like I should be grateful for it. That's not... Like you did me some huge favor by choosing me. Like I was lucky to be here. I never said that. You didn't have to say it. I walked closer to him, close enough to see the guilt flickering in his eyes. You want to know what I think? I said quietly. What? I think you married me because it made you feel good about yourself, progressive, enlightened, above all those racist clients you complain about. That's not true. I think I was your proof that you weren't like them, your black wife trophy. Stop it. And I think you're angry tonight because you're realizing it doesn't work that way. You can't buy your way out of prejudice by marrying someone who looks like me. Naomi, stop. You're still just another white man who thinks he knows better than everyone else, even better than his own wife. Stop. The word exploded out of him. I stopped. But not because he told me to, because something in his face had changed. Something dangerous. You want to know what I think? His voice was low, threatening. I didn't answer. I think you're angry that I see through your act. What act? The poor, victimized black woman act. The act that gets you sympathy and excuses and special treatment. My blood turned to ice. I think you're upset that someone finally called you on it. Called me on what? On using your race as a crutch. On playing the victim to avoid taking responsibility for your own failures. Each word was a slap. Each sentence a deeper wound. You think I play victim? I think you've gotten very comfortable being the oppressed wife, the one who suffers in silence while her terrible white husband succeeds. Ethan, I think you like being able to blame me for everything that goes wrong in your life. That's not, and I think you're terrified that if you stopped playing victim, you'd have to face the truth. What truth? That maybe you're exactly where you deserve to be. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire. Everything was burning down. You think I deserve to be treated like this? I think you deserve exactly what everyone else deserves. No more. No less. And what do I deserve? To be held to the same standards as everyone else. To succeed or fail based on your own merits, not on the color of your skin. I felt something break inside my chest, something that couldn't be fixed. The same standards, I repeated. Yes. Like you? Like anyone. I nodded slowly. I see. Good. Finally. Yes. Finally, I see exactly who I married. His eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means I understand now. Why you keep me separate from your work life. Why you never post pictures of us. Why you dismiss everything I say. I don't dismiss. It's because deep down, you agree with those racist clients. You think I don't belong in your world either. That's not true. Isn't it? You think I'm inferior. That I use my race as an excuse because I can't compete any other way. I think you're capable of more than you show. Or maybe you think I'm capable of less than I am. Maybe you think I should be grateful for the scraps you give me. I give you scraps? His voice rose. I give you this house, this life, this... What? This what? This chance. The words hit the air like a bomb. This chance. Like being married to him was some kind of opportunity he'd graciously provided. A chance at what? At a life you could never have achieved on your own. The room went completely silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Repeat that, I whispered. His face went pale, like he just realized what he'd said. I didn't mean... Repeat that. Naomi, you're misunderstanding. You said I could never achieve this life on my own. Because I'm black? Because I'm inferior? Because I don't deserve it? Because you don't have the connections or the background that I don't have because of racism. The same racism you just spent 20 minutes telling me doesn't exist. It exists. But what? But I should be grateful to you for rescuing me from it. I didn't rescue. You didn't marry me because you loved me. You married me because you thought you were saving me. That's not... From myself. From my own limitations. From the poverty and failure you think I was destined for. I never thought. You thought exactly that. You still think it. You think I'm lucky to be here. Lucky to be with you. Lucky to have this chance you gave me. His silence told me everything. And you know what the worst part is? I continued. What? I believed you. For 3 years, I believed I was lucky. I walked around this house trying to be worthy of the life you gave me. Naomi, I made myself smaller so you wouldn't regret choosing me. I stayed quiet when your friends made comments. I smiled when your mother treated me like hired help. My mother doesn't... I convinced myself that your love was enough, that being chosen by you was proof that I mattered. You do matter. Not to you. Not really. To you, I'm a project. A charity case. A way to prove how good and enlightened you are. That's not true. Then tell me you love me because of who I am. Not despite it. Not in spite of my race or my background or my supposed limitations. Because of who I am. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked away. You can't, can you? Naomi, this is complicated. It's not complicated. Either you love me or you don't. Either you see me as your equal or you don't. Of course you're my equal. I'm your wife who should be grateful for the chance you gave her. Your wife who uses race as an excuse. Your wife who could never achieve this life on her own. I was angry. I said things. You said what you really think. What you've always thought. No. Yes. And you know what? Thank you. Thank you for finally being honest. For showing me exactly where I stand. I turned to leave the kitchen, to go upstairs, to think about what came next. Naomi, wait. I stopped but didn't turn around. I love you, he said. No, I said quietly. You love the idea of me. You love what being married to me says about you. But you don't love me. That's not true. Prove it. How? Apologize. For every single thing you just said. Take it back. Tell me you were wrong. Silence. Tell me you don't think I use race as an excuse. Tell me you don't think I'm lucky to be here. Tell me you married me because I'm amazing, not because I'm a good deed. More silence. Tell me, I said, my voice breaking, that you respect me. The silence stretched so long I could hear my own heartbeat. I thought so, I whispered. I started toward the stairs again. Where are you going? I paused at the bottom step, to figure out how someone like me is going to disappear. What does that mean? I turned to look at him one last time. This man I'd loved. This man I'd built a life with. This man who saw me as a burden he was generous enough to carry. It means maybe you're right. Maybe I should be grateful for what I have. Naomi. Or maybe, I said, my voice getting stronger, I should find out what I can achieve on my own. You don't mean that, don't I? I looked around the beautiful kitchen, the marble counters, the expensive appliances, the perfect life I'd been trying so hard to deserve. You know what the funny thing is? I said. What? You're probably right. I probably can't achieve all this on my own. I probably don't have the right connections or background or whatever else it takes. That's not what I meant. But you know what I do have? What? Pride, self-respect, the ability to recognize when I'm not wanted. You are wanted. No, I'm useful. I make you feel good about yourself, but I'm not wanted. Not for who I really am. I started up the stairs. Naomi, don't do anything stupid. I stopped, turned back one more time. Stupid like what? Like leaving? Like walking away from this chance you gave me? Like throwing away your marriage over one argument? Is that what you think this was? One argument? We can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can what? Fix me. Help me stop playing victim? Teach me to be more grateful? Help us communicate better. There's nothing wrong with our communication. I heard you perfectly clearly. I was angry. I said things I didn't mean. Which things didn't you mean? That I use race as an excuse? That I couldn't achieve this life on my own? That I should be grateful for what you've given me? All of it. Prove it. How? Take it back. Right now. Tell me you were completely wrong about everything you said. He hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. That's what I thought, I said. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, our perfect bedroom with the perfect furniture and the perfect view. I sat on the edge of our perfect bed and looked around at the perfect life I'd been trying so hard to earn. Behind me, I heard Ethan moving around the kitchen, opening another beer, probably telling himself I'd calm down, that we'd work it out, that I'd come to my senses and realize how good I had it. He was wrong. For the first time in 3 years, I was seeing clearly, seeing myself through his eyes, seeing our marriage for what it really was. And what I saw broke my heart. But it also set me free, because now I knew the truth. I wasn't his wife. I was his project. His proof that he wasn't like those other racist clients. His way of feeling superior to all the close-minded people in the world. And projects, I realized, could be abandoned when they stopped being useful, but so could the people working on them. I looked out the window at the expensive neighborhood we lived in, at all the other perfect houses filled with perfect people living perfect lives. Tomorrow, Ethan would leave for his business trip. He'd mentioned it in passing, the way he mentioned most things about his work. Like they didn't concern me, but this one concerned me very much. Because tomorrow, while he was gone, I was going to disappear. Not dramatically. Not with threats or ultimatums or demands for apologies. I was going to quietly, calmly, completely disappear. And when he came home to an empty house, he'd finally understand what he'd lost. Not a charity case, not a project, not a symbol of his own goodness. Me. He'd lost me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to Ethan, listening to his steady breathing, watching the shadows move across our ceiling. He slept peacefully, like nothing had changed, like he hadn't just torn apart everything I thought I knew about our marriage. When morning came, he acted normal, showered, put on his expensive suit, made coffee like it was any other day. "I'll be back Thursday," he said, not really looking at me. "The Henderson account needs these meetings." I nodded from my spot at the kitchen counter. "Safe travels." He paused, coffee mug halfway to his lips. Maybe he heard something different in my voice. Too calm, too polite. "Naomi, about last night. You're going to be late," I said quietly. "We should talk when I get back." "Sure." He studied my face for a moment, looking for signs of anger or hurt or the fight he probably expected. But I'd learned a long time ago how to hide what I was feeling, how to smooth my expression into something neutral and pleasant. "Okay," he said finally. "We'll talk Thursday. Have a good trip." He kissed my cheek, quick and automatic. The kind of kiss you give someone you live with, not someone you love. I wondered how long we'd been doing that, how long I'd been accepting affection that felt like obligation. The garage door rumbled open. His car backed out. The door rumbled closed. I was alone. For a moment, I just sat there in the perfect kitchen of our perfect house, surrounded by perfect silence. Then I walked upstairs to our bedroom and opened my closet. Most of my clothes hung there like strangers. Work clothes I'd bought to fit into his world. Party dresses for events where I smiled and nodded and tried not to say anything that might embarrass him. Expensive pieces that looked good, but didn't feel like me. I pulled out a simple black suitcase, started with basics, jeans, t-shirts, my favorite sweater that Ethan always said looked too casual for the places we went. Important papers came next. Birth certificate, social security card, passport. Bank statements for the small account I'd kept in my own name. The one Ethan didn't know about. Mad money, my grandmother used to call it. Money for when you needed to get mad and leave. I'd been adding to it slowly for months. Nothing dramatic. $20 here, $50 there. Money from birthday gifts and small freelance jobs I'd picked up. It wasn't much, but it was mine. My jewelry box sat on the dresser. Most of the pieces inside had come from Ethan. Anniversary gifts, birthday presents. The engagement ring that had made all my friends jealous. I left it all. Except for my grandmother's pearls and my mother's wedding ring. Those belonged to me before him. The photo albums were harder. Our wedding pictures, vacation memories, 3 years of building a life together. I touched the cover of our honeymoon album, remembering how happy I'd been, how sure I was that we'd found something special. I left them all. By noon, I'd packed one suitcase and a carry-on bag. Everything I truly needed fit into those 2 pieces. Amazing how small your real life could be when you stripped away all the things that belonged to someone else's vision of you. I called in sick to work, just for today. Tomorrow I'd figure out how to resign properly. For now, I needed time to think. Ruth answered on the second ring. Naomi, shouldn't you be at work? Ruth Bennett had been my grandmother's best friend. After Gran died, Ruth had become the closest thing to family I had left. 62 years old and sharp as a tack. She'd raised 5 kids, buried 2 husbands, and survived more heartbreak than anyone should have to bear. If anyone would understand what I was about to do, it would be Ruth. Ruth, I need to ask you something, and I need you to not ask questions right away. Okay, baby? What's wrong? Can I come stay with you for a while? Silence. Then, how long is a while? I don't know yet. What happened? I'll tell you everything when I see you. But Ruth, I need you to know that if Ethan calls looking for me, I haven't seen you. Are you sure? You could get in the middle of something ugly. Ruth's laugh was dry and knowing. Honey, I've been in the middle of ugly before. You come on. I'll make tea. I almost cried then. Almost broke down right there in my perfect bedroom with my packed suitcases and my broken heart. But crying would have to wait. First, I had to disappear. The drive to Ruth's house took 40 minutes. 40 minutes through neighborhoods that got smaller and more modest with each mile. Away from marble countertops and designer fixtures. Away from the life Ethan thought I could never achieve on my own. Ruth lived in a tiny house with a garden that took up most of her backyard. Tomatoes and green beans and flowers everywhere. It was the opposite of perfect. It was real. She met me at the door, took one look at my face, and wrapped me in a hug that smelled like cinnamon and safety. Come on, baby. Tell Ruth everything. We sat at her small kitchen table with cups of tea that warmed my hands and loosened my tongue. I told her about the fight, about the things Ethan had said, about the way he'd looked at me when he said I could never achieve our life on my own. Ruth listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. What do you want to do? She asked finally. I want to leave. For good? I think so. Yes. You sure? Marriage is hard work, baby. Sometimes people say things they don't mean when they're hurting. He meant it, Ruth. Every word. How do you know? Because when I asked him to take it back, he couldn't. He tried to explain it away, but he couldn't just say he was wrong. Ruth nodded slowly. That tells you something. It tells me I've been fooling myself for 3 years. About what? About who he is. About what he thinks of me. About whether he actually loves me, or just loves the idea of loving someone like me. Someone like you. Someone black. Someone he could save. Someone who would make him feel good about himself. Ruth reached across the table and took my hand. What does your gut tell you? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Under all the hurt and anger and confusion, what did I actually feel? Relief, I said quietly. Relief? Like I can finally stop pretending. Stop trying to be worthy of him. Stop walking on eggshells and being grateful for scraps. Scraps? Love that came with conditions. Respect that I had to earn over and over again. A place in his life that I was never quite sure I deserved. Ruth squeezed my hand. You deserve better than that. Do I? Maybe he's right. Maybe I am lucky to have what I had. Stop that. Ruth's voice was sharp. Don't you dare let his words make you smaller than you are. But what if nothing? You are smart and kind and strong. You work hard. You love deeply. Any man would be lucky to have you. Then why? Because some people can only love down. They can only care about people they think need saving. Makes them feel important. I stared at her. Love down? Like charity. Like doing good works. They don't want an equal partner. They want someone grateful. The words hit me like cold water. That's exactly what it felt like. I'm sure it did. But I thought he loved me. Maybe he thought he did too. But love that requires you to be less than you are isn't really love, baby. It's something else. I sat with that for a moment, thinking about all the times I'd made myself smaller to fit into Ethan's world. All the times I'd bitten my tongue, or changed my opinion, or pretended not to notice things that bothered me. So, what do I do now? What do you want to do? Disappear, start over, find out who I am when I'm not trying to be worthy of someone else's love. Then that's what you do. It's scary. Of course it is. But you know what's scarier? What? Spending the rest of your life being grateful for a love that diminishes you. I nodded. She was right. She was absolutely right. Can I stay here while I figure things out? Long as you need. But Naomi? Yeah? Don't just run away. Run toward something. What do you mean? Don't let leaving him be the end of your story. Let it be the beginning. We spent the afternoon planning. Ruth had connections everywhere. A cousin who knew about apartments in the next city over. A friend whose daughter worked at a temp agency. Another friend who cleaned houses for extra money and could teach me how to do the same if I needed quick cash. The important thing, Ruth said, is that you do this clean. No drama, no burning bridges, just gone. Why? Because if you disappear quiet and dignified, you keep your power. If you make a scene, you give him stories to tell about you. Ways to make you the villain. I understood. Ethan was good with words. Good at making himself look reasonable and sympathetic. If I left messy, he'd find ways to make it my fault. My emotional instability. My inability to handle adult conversation. But if I just vanished, if I left no trail and made no demands, he'd have to sit with the silence, with the absence, with the possibility that he'd lost something valuable. What about my job? You'll figure that out. But don't resign until you have something else lined up. You need the income. What about my things? Take what matters. Leave what doesn't. Stuff can be replaced. Your peace of mind can't. By evening, we had a plan. Tomorrow, I'd start looking for a small apartment in Millbrook, an hour away. Nothing fancy, just clean and safe and mine. I'd use my maiden name, Naomi Williams, and pay everything in cash until I could establish new credit. I'd keep working at the hospital for now, making the commute until I found something in Millbrook. When Ethan got back from his trip, I'd already be gone. No note, no explanation, just empty space where I used to be. Won't he look for me? Probably, for a while. What if he finds me? Then you'll deal with that when it happens. But men like Ethan, they don't chase what doesn't want to be caught. Not for long. Their pride gets in the way. That night, I slept in Ruth's spare bedroom. The bed was small, and the sheets were old, but I felt safer than I had in months. Like I could breathe fully for the first time in years. I called the hospital the next morning and told them I had a family emergency. Would need a few days off. My supervisor was understanding. I'd been a good employee for 3 years. Reliable. Never caused problems. Ruth drove me to Millbrook. We spent the day looking at apartments. Most were too expensive or too run down or in neighborhoods that didn't feel safe for a woman alone. By late afternoon, I was starting to worry. Then we found it. A tiny studio apartment over a bakery on the main street. One room with a small kitchen and a bathroom I could barely turn around in. But it was clean and bright and the rent was manageable. The landlord was an older man who seemed more interested in reliable tenants than perfect credit scores. When I told him I'd pay 3 months in advance, cash, he handed me the keys on the spot. "Welcome to Millbrook, Miss Williams," he said. "Miss Williams." I hadn't been Miss Williams in 3 years. It sounded strange. It sounded like freedom. We bought basic supplies at the discount store. Sheets, towels, a few pots and pans, coffee maker, enough to get by for the first few weeks. "You sure about this?" Ruth asked as we carried boxes up the narrow stairs. I looked around the tiny space that was about to become my whole world. No marble countertops, no designer fixtures, no perfect anything. "I'm sure. It's not going to be easy. I know. You're going to be lonely sometimes. I know. You might regret it." I thought about that. Really considered it. Would I regret leaving Ethan? Leaving the beautiful house and the comfortable life, and the security of being married to a successful man? Maybe. Probably. Some nights when the loneliness got bad, or the money got tight, or the world felt too big and uncertain. But I'd regret staying more. "I won't regret it," I said. Ruth hugged me then, long and tight and fierce. "Your grandmother would be proud," she whispered. "You think so?" "I know so. She never liked settling for less than what she deserved either." That evening, Ruth drove back to her house, and I was alone in my new life. I sat on the floor of my empty apartment, my first apartment in 3 years, and tried to figure out how I felt. Scared. Definitely scared. I had enough money to last maybe 2 months if I was careful. No furniture except the bed I'd bought at the secondhand store. No job prospects. No plan beyond making it through tomorrow. But also, excited? Yes. Underneath the fear was something that felt like excitement, like possibility. For the first time in years, I had no one to impress, no one to make proud. No one watching to see if I was worthy of the life I'd been given. This life, this tiny, uncertain, imperfect life, was mine. I'd chosen it. I'd earned it. And no one could take it away by deciding I wasn't grateful enough. My phone buzzed. Text message from Ethan. "Landing in an hour. See you at home." I stared at the message for a long time. Home. He still thought of me as home. Still expected to find me there, waiting. Still believed I'd be too scared or too practical or too grateful to leave. I deleted the message without responding. Tomorrow, he'd walk into our perfect house and find empty closets. He'd call my phone and get voicemail. He'd realize that the woman he thought was too weak and too dependent to survive on her own had simply vanished. I wondered what he'd think in that moment. Would he be angry? Hurt? Confused? Would he finally understand that I wasn't the charity case he'd thought I was? Or would he just feel relieved that the burden was finally gone? I guess I'd never know. And maybe that was the point. Some questions were more powerful when they stayed unanswered. I made myself a cup of coffee with my new coffee maker and sat by the window, watching the town settle into evening. Millbrook wasn't fancy, but it was real. Working people heading home from regular jobs, kids playing in small yards, neighbors talking over fences. It felt honest in a way my old life never had. My phone rang. Ethan. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again 5 minutes later. And again. And again. I turned it off. Tomorrow, I'd drive back to the city for work and start living a double life. Days at the hospital where everything looked normal. Evenings here in Millbrook where I was building something new. It wouldn't be easy. Ruth was right about that. But easy wasn't the goal anymore. Freedom was. Respect was. The chance to find out what I could achieve when I stopped trying to be worthy of someone else's love and started trying to be worthy of my own. Outside my window, the bakery below was closing for the day. The owner, Mrs. Chen, waved up at my window when she saw me there. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she called. I waved back. "Thank you." Such a simple exchange, but it felt monumental. Because Mrs. Chen didn't know anything about my marriage or my mistakes, or whether I deserved to be here. She was just welcoming a neighbor. That's all I was now. A neighbor. A regular person living a regular life, It was the most beautiful thing I could imagine. 6 months passed before I stopped looking over my shoulder. The first few weeks were the hardest. I'd wake up in my tiny apartment and forget for a moment where I was. Reach for my phone expecting texts from Ethan. Drive to work listening for his voice on the radio stations we used to share. He called constantly at first. Dozens of voicemails that I never listened to. Then emails to my work account. Flowers delivered to the hospital with cards I threw away unopened. His mother even showed up at my old desk one afternoon, all concerned smiles and careful questions. "Naomi, dear, Ethan is so worried. He just wants to know that you're safe." I was polite but firm. "I'm fine, Mrs. Carter. Please tell him I'm fine." "But where are you staying?" "He's been beside himself." "I'm safe and I'm well." That's all he needs to know. Surely you can understand a husband's concern for his wife. The word wife hung between us. I looked down at my bare ring finger. "Ex-wife," I corrected gently. "The divorce papers were filed last week." Her face changed then. The careful concern shifted to something colder, more calculated. "I see. And I suppose you'll be asking for quite a settlement." There it was. What she'd really come for. To see how much I planned to take from her precious son. "I'm not asking for anything," I said. "Nothing?" "Nothing. No alimony. No property claims. No support. I just want to be left alone." She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. In her world, wives who left always wanted something. Money, houses, revenge. I don't understand. I know you don't. And that's okay. She left confused and probably more worried than when she'd arrived. A woman who wanted nothing was dangerous, unpredictable, couldn't be bought or bargained with. The calls stopped after that. My new life was small but mine. I worked my shifts at the hospital and came home to my tiny apartment. Made dinner for one. Read books I'd never had time for when I was busy being the perfect wife. Slowly learned who I was when no one was watching. Weekends were for exploring Millbrook. The farmers market on Saturday mornings where Mrs. Chen introduced me to other business owners. The library that stayed open late on Thursdays. The hiking trail that wound through the woods behind town. Simple pleasures. Quiet joy. The luxury of pleasing only myself. I made friends gradually. Sarah, who worked at the library and recommended books that made me think. Marcus, who ran the hardware store and taught me how to fix the leaky faucet in my apartment. Jenny, a nurse at the county clinic who convinced me to volunteer there one Saturday a month. Real friends, people who liked me for who I was, not what I represented or what being associated with me said about them. By winter, I'd settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable. Work, home, books, walks, the occasional coffee with Sarah or dinner with Jenny. Not exciting by my old standards, but deeply satisfying in ways I hadn't expected. That's when Ruth called with news that changed everything. "Your grandmother's house sold," she said. I'd almost forgotten. Gran's little house across town had been sitting empty for 2 years, tied up in probate and family disputes. I'd inherited it along with my cousins, but none of us had known what to do with it. "How much?" Ruth told me. It wasn't a fortune, but split 4 ways, my share was substantial. Enough to make real choices instead of just surviving day to day. "What are you going to do with it?" I stared out my apartment window at the bakery below. Mrs. Chen was arranging fresh bread in the display case, same as every morning. Steady work, honest living, building something that lasted. "I want to go back to school," I said suddenly. "School for what?" "Business. I want to learn how to run something, build something, maybe buy something." "Like what?" I looked around my tiny apartment. Thought about all the things I'd learned to do in the past 6 months. Budget carefully. Live simply. Find joy in small accomplishments. I don't know yet, but something that's mine. Ruth was quiet for a moment. That sounds like your grandmother talking. Is that good or bad? Good, baby. Very good. She always said the best revenge was building a life so good that your enemies wished they hadn't made enemies of you. I laughed. Is that what I'm doing? Getting revenge? Are you? I thought about it honestly. Was I trying to hurt Ethan? To prove him wrong? To show him what he'd lost? Maybe at first. Those early weeks when I was angry and hurt and desperate to prove I could survive without him. But now? Now I barely thought about him at all. My life wasn't about him anymore. It wasn't the opposite of what he'd given me or a reaction to what he'd said. It was just mine. No, I said. I'm not getting revenge. I'm getting free. I started taking business classes at the community college that spring. 2 nights a week and Saturday mornings. Basic accounting, marketing principles, small business management. My classmates were a mix of ages and backgrounds. Single mothers looking to start something from home. Recent immigrants wanting to understand American business culture. Retired folks with dreams they'd put off too long. All of us reaching for something more. I was good at it. Better than good. The numbers made sense to me in ways they never had when Ethan tried to explain his work. But those had been his numbers, his deals, his success. These were mine. Professor Martinez noticed my aptitude and suggested I apply for the full degree program. You have a natural head for this, Naomi. Have you thought about what kind of business you might want to run? I'm still figuring that out. What are you passionate about? I thought about my tiny apartment. The simple pleasure of making it beautiful on almost no money. The satisfaction of fixing what was broken instead of throwing it away. The way neighbors in Millbrook looked out for each other. Community, I said. I like building community. That's broad. What does community mean to you? Places where people belong, where they don't have to pretend to be someone else to fit in. He nodded thoughtfully. Have you considered real estate, property development, community planning? Real estate. I'd never thought about it seriously. But as soon as he said it, something clicked into place. That weekend, I drove around Millbrook with new eyes. Noticed the empty storefronts on Main Street. The old houses that could be beautiful again with some care. The way the town felt like it was waiting for someone to believe in it. Someone to invest, to build, to stay. Monday morning, I called Marcus at the hardware store. Marcus, do you know any real estate agents around here? Depends what you're looking for. Buying or selling? Maybe buying. Something small to start. Commercial or residential? I don't know yet. I'm just starting to think about it. Tell you what, my brother-in-law Jake is an agent. Good guy, honest. Want me to give him your number? That would be great. Jake called that afternoon. We met for coffee at the diner on Main Street, and I found myself telling him about my vague ideas for property investment. Community building. Making spaces where people belonged. How much capital are you working with? He asked. I told him about my grandmother's house money, my savings from the past year of living simply. It wasn't much by my old standards, but it was real money. Money I'd earned through patience and discipline. That's a solid start for this market. Want to look at some properties? We spent Saturday driving around Millbrook and the surrounding towns. Jake showed me rental houses and small commercial spaces. Empty lots where something could be built. Old buildings that needed work, but had good bones. Nothing felt exactly right until we pulled up to a narrow building on Maple Street. 2 stories, brick front, big windows that someone had boarded up years ago. What was this? I asked. Used to be a cafe on the ground floor, small apartment upstairs. Owner died 5 years ago. Family's been trying to sell it ever since, but it needs too much work for most buyers. I got out of the car and stood on the sidewalk, looking up at those boarded windows. The building sat between a flower shop and a bookstore. Foot traffic was steady. Parking was decent. Can we look inside? The interior was rough but not hopeless. Good structural bones, high ceilings, original hardwood floors under years of neglect. The apartment upstairs was small but charming, with windows that would flood the space with light once the boards came down. I could see it, not as it was, but as it could be. What are they asking? Jake told me. It was exactly within my budget if I was careful, if I did some of the work myself, if I was willing to bet everything on one roll of the dice. I'd like to make an offer, I said. You sure? This is a big project for someone just starting out. I'm sure. That night, I called Ruth to tell her about the building. What would you do with it? Fix it up, rent the apartment upstairs, maybe open something on the ground floor. Like what? I'd been thinking about that all day. What did Millbrook need? What would serve the community I was growing to love? A cafe, maybe. Or a community space. Somewhere people can gather, work, meet their neighbors. Sounds expensive. It is expensive. I'd be using most of my money. You scared? Terrified. Good. Fear means it matters to you. The offer was accepted 3 days later. Suddenly I owned a building. A broken, beautiful, impossible building that was going to test everything I'd learned about myself over the past year. I gave notice at the hospital and focused completely on the renovations. Learned to strip wallpaper and sand floors. How to negotiate with contractors and hunt for deals on fixtures. How to turn a vision into reality, one small decision at a time. The work was hard. Harder than anything I'd ever done. Some days I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. If Ethan had been right about my limitations. But then, I'd stand in the space at the end of a long day, seeing the progress we'd made. The way afternoon light fell through the uncovered windows. The possibilities taking shape around me. And I knew I was exactly where I belonged. The cafe opened 6 months later. Simple menu. Local suppliers. Comfortable seating and free Wi-Fi. A community bulletin board where people could post services and events. Book clubs and knitting circles. Small art shows and acoustic music nights. Nothing fancy. Just a place where neighbors could be neighbors. Business was slow at first, but it grew steadily. Word spread. People started choosing my cafe for meetings and first dates and quiet afternoons with good coffee and better conversation. I hired Sarah from the library part-time to help with the evening events. Jenny started bringing her art to display on the walls. Mrs. Chen began supplying pastries for the morning crowd. Community. Real community. Built one conversation at a time. 2 years after I'd disappeared from my old life, I was finally, completely happy. That's when I saw Ethan again. I was behind the counter on a busy Friday afternoon, making change for a customer, when I looked up and saw him standing in my doorway. He looked different. Older. Thinner. His clothes were still expensive, but they hung on him like he'd lost weight. His hair was perfectly styled, but there were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. Our eyes met across the crowded cafe. Time stopped. He looked around the space, my space, taking in the exposed brick walls and mismatched furniture. The local art and community announcements. The customers chatting over coffee and laptops. Then he looked back at me, standing behind the counter in jeans and an apron, serving coffee to my neighbors. Building the life he'd said I could never achieve on my own. I saw the moment he understood, the shock in his face, the calculation as he processed what this place meant, what my presence here meant. I finished with my customer and walked over to where he stood by the door. Hello, Ethan. Naomi. His voice was carefully controlled. Nice place. Thank you. I was in town on business, saw the sign. Didn't expect to find you here. Where did you expect to find me? He didn't answer that. Instead, he looked around again, his lawyer's mind probably calculating property values and overhead costs. You own this? I do. How? Such a simple question. Such a loaded question. Same way anyone owns anything, I said calmly. I bought it. With what money? My money. Naomi, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just surprised. Last I knew, you were working at the hospital. I still work at the hospital, part-time now. And that pays enough for this? I could see him struggling to understand. In his world, success looked like what he had. Corporate salary, expensive house, status symbols. This tiny cafe in a small town didn't compute. Ethan, why are you here? I told you, business. No. Why are you here? In my cafe, talking to me. He was quiet for a moment. The afternoon crowd buzzed around us, but we might have been alone. I wanted to see if you were okay. And am I? He looked at me. Really looked at me. Saw the confidence I'd built. The peace I'd found. The life I'd created without him. You look good, he said finally. Thank you. Happy. I am. I'm glad. But he didn't look glad. He looked confused, unsettled. Like finding me successful and content had upset some internal calculation. Ethan, I need to get back to work. Of course, I don't want to keep you. He turned to go, then stopped. Naomi? Yes? I'm sorry. For what I said that night. I was wrong. The apology I'd waited for. The words I'd needed to hear 3 years ago. Now they just sounded empty. Okay, I said. That's it? Okay? What else would you like me to say? I don't know. Something. Anything. I looked at this man I'd once loved, once tried so hard to please, once thought I needed to be complete. I forgive you, I said simply. Do you? Yes. Then maybe we could. Talk sometime. Really talk. About what happened. About what we both learned. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Because I've moved on, Ethan. Completely. And I think you should too. He stared at me for a long moment. Maybe hoping I'd change my mind. Maybe realizing that I meant it. The divorce was finalized last year, he said. I know. Are you seeing someone? That's not really your business anymore. I know, I wondered if you were happy. I told you I was. I mean really happy, not just making the best of things. I understood what he was asking. Was I settling for this small-town life because it was all I could manage? Was I truly content, or just making do? I'm really happy, I said firmly. This is the life I chose, the life I built. And I love every imperfect, difficult, wonderful piece of it. Even though it's not. Not what? Not what we had. I almost laughed. No, it's not what we had. It's so much better. The words hit him like a slap. His face went red, then pale. Better? Better because it's mine. Because I earned it. Because I don't have to be grateful to anyone for the privilege of living it. Naomi, I never asked you to be grateful. You didn't have to ask. It was the price of admission to your world. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Maybe remembering his own words from that awful night. Maybe finally understanding what they'd really meant. I should go, he said. Yes, you should. He walked to the door, then turned back one more time. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. For what it's worth, I said quietly. I don't need you to be. He left then, walked out of my cafe and out of my life for what I hoped was the final time. I watched him go, waiting to feel something. Anger, sadness, vindication. Instead, I felt nothing. Like he was just another customer who'd decided not to buy anything. Sarah came over from where she'd been pretending not to watch. You okay? I'm perfect, I said. And I was. 3 years ago, I'd been a woman trying to earn her place in someone else's life. Tonight, I was a woman who'd built her own life from scratch, who'd created something beautiful and meaningful and entirely hers. Ethan would go back to his corporate world and his perfect house, and his search for another woman to save. Maybe he'd learned something from our marriage. Maybe he hadn't. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. I had a business to run, a community to serve, a life to live, and every single piece of it belonged to me. 5 years later, I owned 3 buildings on Main Street. The success of the cafe had surprised everyone, including me. What started as a simple neighborhood gathering place had grown into something special. Food bloggers from the city drove out to try our weekend brunch. The local college sent students for our business networking events. Wedding parties booked our back room for rehearsal dinners. But it was the everyday customers who mattered most. The regulars who knew my name and asked about my weekend plans. The book club that met every Tuesday evening. The high school kids who did homework at my corner tables. The young mothers who brought their babies for coffee and conversation. Real community. The kind Ethan's world had been too polished to allow. With the cafe's success came opportunities. The building next door went up for sale, and I bought it. Renovated the ground floor into a small boutique that featured local artists and craftspeople. Turned the upstairs into affordable office space for freelancers and small startups. A year later, the old hardware store closed when Marcus retired. Instead of letting it sit empty, I bought that too. Kept part of it as a hardware store, the town needed one, and converted the rest into a co-working space with fast Wi-Fi and meeting rooms. Each purchase was calculated. Each renovation was an investment in the community I'd grown to love. I wasn't getting rich, but I was building something lasting. Something that mattered. The local newspaper wrote a feature about my downtown revitalization efforts. The mayor asked me to join the Economic Development Committee. Young entrepreneurs started calling, asking for advice about their own business plans. I'd become what I'd never imagined, a community leader. Someone people looked to for answers and guidance. It felt surreal sometimes. Remembering the woman I'd been 5 years ago, desperate to disappear. Now I couldn't walk down Main Street without stopping for 3 conversations. Couldn't go to the grocery store without someone asking my opinion on the new traffic patterns or the proposed bike path. I loved it. Not the attention. That still made me uncomfortable. But the belonging. The sense that I'd found my place, and made it better by being there. That's why Jake's phone call caught me off guard. "There's a property I think you should see," he said. "But it's not what you usually go for." "What is it?" "The old Riverside Estate." I nearly dropped the phone. Everyone in the county knew the Riverside Estate. 15 acres of prime land overlooking the river. A mansion that had been the crown jewel of the area for over a century. Old money, old power, the kind of place that hosted charity galas and political fundraisers. Jake, that's way out of my league. Maybe not anymore. The family's been trying to sell for 2 years. They've dropped the price 3 times. Why can't they sell it? It needs work, a lot of work. The last owner let maintenance slide for years before he died. Now it's too much house for most buyers, but too expensive for developers to tear down. "How expensive?" he told me. My heart stopped. It was a fortune. More money than I'd ever imagined spending. More than my business generated in 2 good years. But it wasn't impossible. Not if I leveraged my other properties. Not if I was willing to bet everything I'd built on one enormous risk. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've watched you turn 3 broken buildings into thriving businesses. Because you see potential where other people see problems. And because..." He paused. "Because I heard your ex-husband was one of the bidders who walked away." My blood went cold. Ethan bid on it. His company did. About 6 months ago. Walked away when they saw the inspection reports. I sat with that information. Ethan had wanted this place. Had seen it as worth pursuing, had walked away when it proved too challenging. "Can I see it?" "When?" "Now." The gates to Riverside Estate were wrought iron and elaborate, designed to impress and intimidate. They hung open now, slightly crooked on their hinges. The long driveway curved through overgrown gardens toward a house that took my breath away. Even in its current state, it was magnificent. 3 stories of golden stone with tall windows and elegant proportions. Wide front steps leading to a covered porch that wrapped around the entire first floor. Wings that stretched out like welcoming arms. It was also clearly falling apart. Paint peeled from the window frames. Several shutters hung at odd angles. The roof needed major work. The gardens that had once been featured in magazines were now wild tangles of overgrown shrubs and invasive weeds. Want to go inside? The interior was even more stunning and more heartbreaking than the exterior. Soaring ceilings and original hardwood floors. A grand staircase that curved up to the second floor like something from a movie. Fireplaces in every room. Windows that framed the river like living paintings. It was also a disaster. Water damage in the back wing. Electrical systems that hadn't been updated since the 1970s. Plumbing that barely functioned. Heating systems that would cost a fortune to replace. How much work are we talking about? Jake handed me a thick folder. Professional estimates from 3 different contractors. They all came in around the same number. I looked at the total and felt sick. It would take every penny I had, plus loans I wasn't sure I could qualify for. And that was if nothing went wrong. If they didn't find more problems once the work started. What would I even do with it? What do you want to do with it? I walked through the empty rooms imagining the grand dining room could host events, weddings, corporate retreats, community fundraisers. The library could be a meeting space for nonprofits and civic groups. The smaller parlors could work as offices or private dining rooms. The grounds could be restored to their original beauty. Gardens for events. Walking paths along the river. Maybe even a small amphitheater for outdoor concerts. It could be beautiful again, useful again. A place that served the community instead of just impressing it. I don't know, I said honestly, but I can see what it could be. That's what I figured. We spent 2 more hours walking through every room, every outbuilding, every overgrown garden path. By the time we left, I was overwhelmed and exhilarated and terrified. I need to think about this. Don't think too long. They've got another interested party looking at it next week. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my small apartment above the cafe. I'd never moved, even as my businesses grew, and stared at the ceiling, thinking about risk and reward, about the difference between a smart investment and a fool's gamble. I called Ruth. You want to buy what? I explained about the estate, the opportunity, the enormous risk. How much money are we talking about? I told her. Lord have mercy. That's more money than I've seen in my whole life. I know. You sure about this? No, not at all. Then why are you considering it? I thought about that. Why was I considering it? Because I wanted to prove I could. Because Ethan had tried and failed. Because it would be the ultimate symbol of how far I'd come. No. Those were ego reasons. Bad reasons. Because it could be something special, I said finally. Something the whole community could use and be proud of. That's better. But baby, that's also expensive idealism. I know. What's your gut tell you? My gut said I was crazy. My gut said no sane person bet everything on a crumbling mansion and a restoration project that could bankrupt her. My gut also said this was my moment. My chance to do something truly significant. To take everything I'd learned about business and community and building something lasting and apply it on a scale that could change everything. My gut says I'd regret not trying more than I'd regret failing. Ruth was quiet for a long time. When do you need to decide? Soon. There's another buyer interested. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. I'm driving up tomorrow. I want to see this place for myself. Ruth, you don't need to. Yes, I do. This is too big a decision to make alone. And I want to look this mansion in the eye. and see what it's really about. She arrived Saturday morning with a thermos of coffee and a notebook full of questions. We spent the day at the estate with Jake, going through every room, every estimate, every potential problem. Ruth asked practical questions I hadn't thought of: insurance costs, property taxes, liability issues for hosting events, staffing requirements, marketing challenges. By afternoon, I was more overwhelmed than ever. "It's too much," I said as we sat on the front steps, looking out over the neglected gardens toward the river. "Too big, too expensive, too risky." "Maybe," Ruth said. "But let me ask you something." "What?" "5 years ago, when you packed those 2 suitcases and left that perfect house, what did you want?" "To disappear." "No, baby. After that, what did you want to build?" I thought about it. A life that was mine. Just yours? No. A life that mattered. That helped other people. That made the world a little bit better. And have you done that? I think so. In small ways. Nothing small about what you've done. You've transformed this whole downtown, created jobs, built community, made a difference. But this is different. This is bigger, riskier, more important. I nodded. So the question isn't whether you can afford to buy it. The question is whether you can afford not to. What do you mean? I mean, you've spent 5 years proving you could survive on your own. Build something small and sustainable. Now the question is whether you're ready to do something that could fail spectacularly. And if it does fail, then you'll start over, like you did before. But this time you'll know you tried for something worth having. That evening, Jake called with news. The other buyer made an offer. My heart sank. Higher than asking? Lower, but cash, no financing contingencies. How long do the sellers have to decide? Until Monday. And if I want to counter? You'd need to do it tomorrow. I hung up and stared at my laptop screen, opened to spreadsheets that showed every possible scenario. Best case, worst case, most likely case. None of them made the numbers work easily. All of them required faith that I could pull off something extraordinary. At midnight, I walked down to the cafe, used my key to let myself in, sat in the quiet space I'd built from nothing, and tried to remember who I'd been when I started this journey. A woman afraid of her own shadow, grateful for scraps, convinced she deserved whatever crumbs fell from someone else's table. That woman would never have risked everything on a broken-down mansion, would never have believed she could restore something so grand, would never have imagined that she deserved to try. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I called Jake at 7 a.m. Sunday morning. "I want to make an offer." "For how much?" I told him. It was everything I could possibly raise. Every asset I owned, leveraged to the limit. Every dollar of credit I could qualify for. A number that scared me just to say out loud. "You sure about this?" "No. Do it anyway." The call came Monday afternoon. I was at the cafe, trying to focus on inventory while my phone sat silent on the counter. "They accepted," Jake said. My knees went weak. "They what?" "They accepted your offer. Congratulations. You just bought the Riverside estate." I hung up and sat in stunned silence. I'd actually done it. Committed to something so far beyond anything I'd attempted before that I could barely comprehend it. Sarah found me there an hour later, still staring at my phone. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I think I have. The ghost of my former sanity. "What happened?" I told her about the estate, the offer, the acceptance. "Oh my God, Naomi, that's incredible." Or incredibly stupid. Maybe both, but definitely incredible. Word spread quickly through town. By the end of the week, everyone knew that the woman who'd quietly rebuilt downtown was taking on the county's most iconic property. The reactions were mixed. Some people were excited, seeing it as another step in the area's revival. Others were skeptical, worried I'd bitten off more than I could chew. A few were openly critical. "She's gotten too big for her britches," I overheard Mrs. Patterson tell her bridge group. "Mark my words, this will end badly." Maybe it would. Maybe I'd lose everything and have to start over again. Maybe I'd prove that some dreams were too big for small-town girls who used to be afraid of their own shadows. But as I stood on the front steps of Riverside Estate, with my keys in my hand, and 5 years of hard-won confidence in my heart, I realized something important. I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of failing. Not of succeeding. Not of being too much, or not enough, or different from what people expected. I was exactly who I was supposed to be. A woman who saw possibility where others saw problems. Who built things that lasted. Who made spaces where people belonged. And if Ethan could see me now, standing in front of a mansion he'd walked away from, about to transform it into something beautiful and useful and entirely my own, maybe he'd finally understand what he'd lost when he told me to disappear. I hadn't just disappeared. I'd become someone worth finding. Someone worth knowing. Someone who didn't need anyone else's permission to take up space in the world. The work would start Monday. 6 months of chaos and uncertainty, and moments when I'd question every decision I'd made. But tonight, I was going to stand in my beautiful, broken, impossible mansion and dream about what it could become. And tomorrow morning, I was going to start building it. One careful, confident, completely my own decision at a time. The sun was setting over the river, painting the old windows gold. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the sounds of Millbrook settling into evening. My town. My community. My home. I'd found my place in the world, and the world was better for it. Some mornings, I suspected Ethan still wondered what had happened to the woman who'd disappeared from his life. But he'd never find out. That woman was gone forever. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, and infinitely more dangerous. Someone who knew exactly what she was worth. And what she was worth was everything she'd dreamed of and more.